Someone is in a car accident. They go to the emergency room. They test positive for COVID while they're there. They're not there being treated for COVID.
With COVID, as opposed to because of COVID.
But better than that, we have to improve the attitude in the country.
The COVID is now taking a flip-flop, according to several political leaders and even Dr. Fauci. Who would have thought? We're also going to talk about January 6th and a couple more things coming up in this episode of Daily Caller Live. Daily Caller Live starts right now. My name is Jobob. Thanks for watching.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
From an exceedingly hotel room here in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. I feel like I keep upgrading. I'm in a suite now, so this is nice. But we're coming to you live, Daily Caller Live today, talking about COVID again. Now, it's interesting how the tables have turned with the whole coronavirus pandemic. People are now talking about hospitalization numbers, and are people being hospitalized because of COVID or with COVID? That's a huge thing coming up. First, we're going to talk about that right off the bat. Also, yes, I want to talk about some of the components of January 6th, as it is the 1-year anniversary of the Capitol riot. I want to bring a perspective that I feel like a lot of people are missing. There's a political angle here that I believe Nancy Pelosi and a lot of the Democrats are playing, and I feel like not many people are talking about it, or at least you're not going to hear about it on your mainstream media. So we're going to talk about that. Deportations in Australia. I wish we were having them here, but that's going on elsewhere. So all of that coming up. I wanted to get to this first. We've all been saying that, well, let me just play you this clip first. This is Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, the liberal state of New York, the leftiest of the left. The New York governor, Kathy Hochul, is saying things that a lot of us have been saying for literally years now. Watch this clip and let me know if what she's saying is familiar. Click the little like button, click the little share button. People need to hear this because apparently lefties are coming around to the point of view that a lot of us have had for about 18 months now. Watch this.
We talk about the hospitalizations. I have always wondered, when we're looking at the hospitalizations of people testing positive in a hospital, is that person in the hospital because of COVID? Or did they show up there and are routinely tested and showing positive, and they may have been asymptomatic or even just had the sniffles?
What?
Someone is in a car accident. They go to the emergency room. They test positive for COVID while they're there. They're not there being treated for COVID. Now,
that wouldn't
someone's
happen.
Conditions can worsen while they're in the hospital. I'm not saying that won't happen, but I just been doing a random call around to some of the hospital leaders that I touch base with, and I'm seeing numbers from 20 to sometimes 50%, but we don't have clear data right now. That's anecdotal. Beginning tomorrow, we're going to be asking all hospitals to break out for us how many people are being hospitalized because of COVID symptoms, how many people happen to be testing positive just while they're in there for other treatments.
Oh my goodness. If only someone had been saying that for the last 18 months. The CDC and everybody keeping statistics is not distinguishing the difference between people going to the hospital because of COVID and people going to the hospital with COVID. And guess what? Now your super lockdown governors like Kathy Hochul in New York are finally saying, well, there's got to be a difference. Some people are in there because of a car accident. Some people are in there because of other things, and they shouldn't be counted as a COVID hospitalization. Again, if only someone had been saying this for the last 18 months. Oh, wait. We absolutely have. And not even us, not even the right side of the aisle has been saying this. The left even started saying this several months ago. I'm going to read an article from The Atlantic. Now, I brought this article on the show when it first happened. I believe when we first started doing this show. This is from September of this year. Months ago, this article came out in The Atlantic, not a conservative-leaning news outlet. Listen to this. Our most reliable pandemic number is losing its meaning. This is from The Atlantic in September. A new study suggests that almost half of those hospitalized with COVID-19 have mild or asymptomatic cases. Researchers have tried to get a similar question before for two separate studies published in May. Doctors in California read through several hundred charts of pediatric patients one by one to figure out why exactly each COVID-positive child had been admitted to the hospital. Did they need treatment for COVID, or were they there for some other reason like cancer treatment or a psychiatric episode, and their COVID diagnosis was merely incidental? According to these researchers, this is again months ago. It has been months. They're following the science by at least 6 months. According to those researchers, 40 to 50% of the hospitalizations that they examined were patients in the latter group of patients who were just happened to be in the hospital as they broke their leg or had some sort of other terrible disease and just happened to test positive for COVID. If you've been to the hospital, you get tested all the dang time. And if you're in the hospital for some random thing and happen to be an asymptomatic case, you still count as a COVID hospitalization. And Kathy Hochul and a bunch of people on the left are now asking that question. Even Dr. Fauci is asking that question. Listen to this clip from a couple days ago of Dr. Fauci talking about hospitalizations. Again, if only someone had been saying this for years now. Give me a break.
Is that if you look at the children who are hospitalized, many of them are hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. And
Yeah,
what we
dude.
mean by that, if a child goes in the hospital, they automatically get tested for COVID, and they get counted as a COVID hospitalized individual, when in fact they may go in for a broken leg or appendicitis or something like that. So it's overcounting the number of children who are, quote, hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID.
Yeah, dude, we know. We've been saying this for a year and a half now. But finally, things are coming around to the side of logic and reason. Again, apparently the whole follow the science thing was meaning like, we're going to follow it by at least 6 months or a year, maybe even more than that. We're not going to actually go by the guidelines and what the quote-unquote science says or any of the reason and logic out there. No, we literally mean follow the science by being 6 months to a year effing late. But again, the Atlantic article continues to say that study found through March of 2020 and as early as January 2021, before vaccinations were widespread and before the Delta variant had arrived, the proportion of patients with mild or asymptomatic disease was 36%, and those people all counted as COVID hospitalizations. This is again from The Atlantic several months ago, not a right-leaning news outlet, and just now your super lockdowny governors and medical officials are now finally reacting to it. From mid-January to the end of June 2021, so this data is old. It could have gone way up since then. However, the number rose to 48%. Half of the COVID hospitalizations have been not because of COVID, but with COVID. People randomly going to the hospital, like Dr. Fauci just said, with a broken leg, count as COVID hospitalizations. If only someone had been saying that for the last 18 months. We could have been out of this thing already and stopped talking about it. Look, the numbers are wildly out there. And look, this accounts also for deaths. We actually have no idea, and I don't know that we're ever going to actually know. Maybe years from now, someone will do a deep dive and write a book about it, but we have no idea if it's because of COVID or with COVID via hospitalizations and deaths. And that is not coming from a right-leaning conservative. No, it's coming from the governor of New York now. Everybody is climbing on board because they see the writing on the wall and how ridiculous it has been constantly with this whole with COVID, not because of COVID. That's a little bit enough of that. I'm getting sweaty. irritates me talking about that sort of stuff. I want to get to this. I have some thoughts to share on the whole January 6th thing. It is the anniversary of it. Your mainstream media is going wall to wall. I have some thoughts that I feel like are being completely missed in all of the media outlets that I want to share with you, and I want to get your reaction to it. Before that, I got to tell you about what's going on in the markets right now. Do you have a savings account? Have you saved up money? Are you in a retirement? Do you have a 401k or a Roth IRA account? What do you have that is saving money? Because the way the government is treating the value of the dollar, they are taxing you by way of inflation, and you need to protect your savings. If you have an IRA account and you have a 401k account, the best way that you can protect yourself against inflation is through precious metals. And there's no better way to do that, to transfer your IRA or your 401k that's already existing to a gold-backed Roth IRA or 401k than through Birch Gold. You may be thinking, I have no idea how to invest in gold. Do I go down to the local pawn shop and buy a bunch of gold earrings? No. You can text the word Jobob, my name, Jobob, to 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a no obligation, no cost, no nothing pamphlet on what exactly you need to do to transfer your IRA account, to transfer your 401k account to a gold-backed retirement plan. That is this is a friend to a friend telling you that all of the people that kept saying you need to invest in precious metals, yeah, they were right. And the best way that you can learn how to do that is text JOBOB to 989898, and our friends at Birch Gold will send you everything you need to know about how you can protect your savings against the government tanking the valuation of the U.S. dollar. 989898 JOBOB to 989898. I want to get back to this. I have some thoughts on. Look, you're going to hear a lot from the mainstream media. This is the worst day in American history. Kamala Harris led off her remarks. This is a tweet from Shelby Talcott, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, said VP Harris begins her January 6th remarks by comparing the date to others that occupy not only a place in our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941. When thousands of Americans died on ships in Pearl Harbor, and September 11th, 2001, when again thousands of Americans died in a terrorist attack. The vice president said that those two things are similar with what happened in January 6th. Now, this is not to say that January 6th wasn't terrible. I am not one of those people that says, oh yeah, it was great. No, it was awful. It was absolutely terrible. The riot at the Capitol was terrible. That's the disclaimer that I'm giving. But to compare it to when thousands of Americans were killed at the hands of foreign powers, yeah, that's not the same thing. There was one death, and it was at the hands of the Capitol Police. And I'm not going to get into all of that. You can hear that a bunch of other places. But I want to shed some light on a huge missed point that I feel like a lot of your media outlets, especially ones that lead to the right, aren't picking up. Definitely not the mainstream media or the alphabet networks are not picking up this kind of thought. They're more a lot of your right-wing outlets are more focused on the inconsistencies, the jail times, all of that sort of stuff. You can get that elsewhere. What I want to remind people of is that Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and Democrats across Congress and across the Senate never took it seriously from the beginning. I'm saying that outright because that is what I believe, and their actions prove it. And what I mean by that is January 6th happened. Again, terrible. I don't think Trump reacted appropriately. I don't think a lot of people reacted appropriately to it. If Nancy Pelosi wanted, I think and I think a lot of people who are being objective about this would agree with me. I think that Nancy Pelosi could have filed impeachment the next day on something broad and she would have been able to convince Congress and the Senate to get Trump out of office if she wanted to. But she didn't. She didn't do it on purpose. So that is why I'm saying Democrats never took this thing seriously from the beginning. Instead, she waited several weeks when everything died down and then filed impeachment on some super specific, what was it? Dereliction of duty, and made it so that Congress people voted against it so that she could get congressional people on the record voting against the impeachment. Again, what I'm saying is that Democrats from the very beginning did not take January 6th seriously because Speaker Pelosi, if she were taking the whole thing seriously, if she was serious about this is a threat to our democracy and this is she would have filed the impeachment the next day and would have had the support of anybody, pretty much most people in Congress and most people in the Senate, to convict and remove from office, but she didn't for political reasons. And that is what I want people to remember going forward. The whole January 6th commission, we can talk, you can find this elsewhere, people talking about, oh, it's a fraudulent commission. It is a political attack. What's going to happen is this commission is going to wrap up probably mid-October, I think. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to be used as a hammer to hit Republicans in the midterms. It's all a political endgame. That is what I'm saying here. When I say that they didn't take it seriously, what I'm saying is that instead of actually, if they think that this is such a threat to democracy, if they thought Donald Trump was such a threat to democracy, they could have removed him from office, and they didn't for political reasons. She could have filed impeachments the next day. She didn't. She waited. She filed something super specific so she could get Republicans on the record so she could hit them in the midterms. So when you hear the mainstream media talking about how this is a threat to our democracy, was it terrible? Absolutely. No arguments here that it was a terrible thing that happened, and I wish it didn't happen, and I wish it didn't happen. But to say that Democrats actually believe that it was an attack and an assault, okay, prove it. Prove it by impeaching immediately and not using it for political purposes. That's I want to make sure people remember that and when going forward, and especially too. Like I mentioned, the January 6th commission that is going on in the House right now, they're going to come to their findings mid-October. There's no reason that this thing should have lasted 18 months. That commission should have lasted 18 months, but it's going to because they want to use it again for political purposes. This has nothing to do with actually protecting democracy. It has to do with elections, which is the most cynical thing. You can't be cynical enough about politicians. Again, if you want to hear all of the inaccuracies, discrepancies with what's going on in the investigations and the FBI and Merrick Garland and all that stuff, fine, you can get that pretty much anywhere. That's where everybody's covering this. I want to bring you the political angle because I feel like that's the actual important thing when it comes to elections and when it comes to the midterms that are coming up, when the only thing they're going to be using, I saw a commercial that was going against Congresswoman Boebert, and maybe I'll post the commercial or retweet it or something, but if you watch it, all of it is so overblown and dramatic and just completely misleading and inaccurate. But again, you can get that stuff elsewhere. I want to make sure that the viewers here understand the political angle that Nancy Pelosi and Democrats took and didn't take it seriously from the beginning. I'm even more sweaty now because that thing gets me fired up. I want to talk about that. That's all I'm going to say about the whole January 6th thing. We talked about yesterday how elections and the integrity of elections is not a one-sided thing. You're going to hear from the mainstream media constantly that, well, the only reason the Capitol riot happened was because Trump supporters didn't believe the election. Yeah, except for yesterday, we played all the clips from 2016, and a third of Hillary Clinton supporters didn't believe the legitimacy of the election. So it's not a one-sided issue. It's an American issue. And I thought that Yesterday, when I was talking about the whole voter integrity thing, I think the only solution we have is to go back to the way we used to vote. You show your person your ID, you get your ballot, you vote in private, you put it in a concealed box, and it's counted in the view of the public for everyone to see. That seems to be the best way of doing things. All of this other crap about all the mail ballots that are getting thrown everywhere, Schumer trying to get his stupid federal bill passed, that is a bunch of baloney. And the thing that we need to be concerned of as Americans is the integrity of our elections. If nobody believes the elections on both sides, if it comes to the fact that whoever loses calls the election fraudulent, that's not good. It's not good for Americans as a whole. It's not good for us as a country. If we don't believe the elections, our system is broken. We don't have a system that works. That's all I'm going to say about that. Again, if you want more of the back and forth and the disconnections of all the different things that went on, you can find that elsewhere. There's a lot of people out there talking about that. I want to get to this. In the title, we've got deportations, which is funny because I think a lot of you probably thought, deportations, yay, we're finally deporting people who have come into our country illegally. 150,000 people a month the entire year of 2021, if not more than that. Millions of people, yay, finally we're doing something and talking about deportations. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a tennis star getting deported from Australia. I want to bring you that story and give you some breakdowns of what that is. But first, I got to talk about this. If you've seen the jobless numbers, the jobless numbers came out today. They are through the roof. They are 200,000 jobless claims higher than what was expected, which is not good. They come out every Thursday, and it's not good. And what's the government going to do in response? They're going to push more money into the system, which, guess what, causes inflation to go up. I know we talk about inflation a lot, but it is the most important actual real impact thing that is going to affect you. You need to protect your savings. Look, I have parents with retirement accounts. I have friends with parents with retirement accounts. If you have a retirement account, an IRA, a 401k, you can have your savings protected by transferring it over to an IRA or 401k that is backed by precious metals. The inflation proof as you can get, precious metals is the way to go. And the best way that you can do that, or at least learn how to do that, because you're probably thinking, Jobob, I have no idea how to get my IRA or my 401k backed by precious metals to protect myself against inflation. Good news for you. You can text JOBOB to 989898, and our friends at Birch Gold will send you a pamphlet. No obligation. There's no risk. There's no nothing. You're not signing up for anything. You're just getting information on how you can do it. Again, their retirement plans can be backed by gold, which has historically been the best way to hedge your bets against inflation. So text JOBOB to 989898. Do yourself a favor, friend to a friend, protect yourself against inflation. Again, JOBOB to 989898 to get a risk-free, no obligation package from Birch Gold on how you can best do that. I want to talk deportation of a tennis star. So unfortunately, no, we're not talking about the United States. We're not talking about the United States. We're talking about Australia. Novak Djokovic, do you know who he is? He's the #1 ranked tennis player in the entire world. Is facing deportation in Australia. This is fascinating. Look, if you don't know anything about tennis, you have to be crazy in shape to play tennis. Sometimes those matches can go on for hours. Actually, I think the majority of matches go on for hours. 4 hours, sometimes they can get up to 11 hours. What I'm saying is you have to be in fantastic freaking shape. And if we remember the CNN article that came out the other day, that people who are in shape and not obese have a much, much less risk of the COVID-19. Being in shape seems to be pretty beneficial. Novak Djokovic is the world's #1 ranked tennis player, super in shape dude, and spends, I would be willing to bet, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on his body every single year. So I would imagine he decided, because he is at almost and by almost, I mean literally zero risk against the COVID-19, he probably didn't get the shot. Well, he is now facing the consequences of that in Australia. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison released a statement on Tuesday announcing that top-ranked tennis pro will no longer be granted entry to the country just days after receiving a medical exemption that would allow him to participate in the Grand Slam tournament. Awesome. We're deporting people in Australia because they didn't get the shot that they don't need and won't protect anybody else. Australian border forces also released a statement stating Djokovic did not provide the appropriate evidence to meet the government's entry requirements, resulting in his visa being canceled. Australia is protecting their borders against literally somebody who's going to bring money to their economy. They're saying, you don't have the right paperwork. You should get out of there. Hey, Mr. President, the White House, maybe we should take some notes. In the statement, the Prime Minister says Mr. Djokovic's visa has been canceled. Rules are rules, especially when it comes to our borders. Huh. Seems like a good idea in a lot of cases. Maybe Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, you can take a hint from that. In this case, it's ridiculous, but maybe we should take our borders seriously. Rules are rules, says the Australian Prime Minister, even though their rules are stupid. Our strong border policies have been critical to Australia having the lowest death rates of COVID in the world. Yeah, also the highest rate of freaking totalitarianism. So there's that. Victoria State's acting minister of sports said on Twitter that Wednesday that they would not support Djokovic's visa after him being revoked by the federal government. Holy cow. Finally, somebody's taking the borders seriously. Unfortunately, it happens to be Australia that has... When I say concentration camps, I'm not talking about the death camps that the Nazis were having. I'm literally talking about people concentrated into a camp. In that sense, Australia has COVID concentration camps in their country. So maybe they have less COVID death. But at what cost? I learned a new word. I'm not going to go into that. But again, at what cost are you having these things? I would imagine that most people around the world would look at Australia and are looking at Australia saying, that's freaking crazy. And the possible deportation of the number one tennis star who's going to benefit their economy and not going to be a risk to himself or anyone, kicking him out of the country is just another example of at what cost. You know how many people who are working the Grand Slam tennis event want Djokovic to be there because he draws in a crowd? Maybe they don't have crowd, but you know how many TV advertisers or how many people that are working on this event are like, dude, he's our number one draw for people to spend money and get the Australian economy moving. And now we just won't let him in for no apparent reason? Yeah. Remember, Australian government, at what cost? And the cost is the livelihood of your citizens. So there's that. Congratulations on that. Maybe we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but what's going on in Kazakhstan is crazy. Wow, that was a harsh transition from deportations of tennis stars in Australia to uprising in Central Asia. Kazakhstan is going nuts. You know what? We're going to talk more about that tomorrow because I feel like it needs more time than we have today. Spoiler alert on the whole Kazakhstan thing. Dictatorships don't work. Who would have thought? Wow. Interesting. But again, we'll talk about more of that tomorrow. That's going to do it for us today. If you haven't already, if you missed a segment of the show, you can watch it anywhere. You can Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you watch content. You can also download it on the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, the Apple Podcast, Spotify, Deezer, all of these other podcast apps that you can listen to it each and every day. I don't know, fun way to take in some of the news of the day, maybe while you're mowing your lawn, cleaning your pool, all of those things. So you can find us pretty much anywhere and rewatch all the episodes. We will be right back here tomorrow. We're going to talk about Kazakhstan. I think there's a couple Jen Psaki things we want to talk about tomorrow. But we will, we'll be back here live and in person, back in the Digital Bunker tomorrow. Today we're going to be back on the couch, Turning Point USA. So if you have a chance around, 2:30 Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be on the couch making jokes about the news and talking about how America's going down the hole. But enough of that. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.